Alrighty, couple little stories on old Teabag and whatnot. It's sort of interesting, I know that many Americans have not lived overseas, and many Americans just don't have any clue outside of America, really. And it's bad and it looks obvious. You'd be surprised a lot of British do, and it's because of the British Empire, which officially only ended in 1997, 98, I think it was, with the handover of Hong Kong. But there's just so many old people, old relatives who have, been in some part of the British Empire other than England, and so they get a good idea of, the rest of the world, and because of so many English-speaking nations that were former British colonies, a lot of them, have sort of travelled a lot more freely to a lot of these places, With my grandfather going to New Guinea, my mum and my aunt went there. I'm not going there, but I might be going to the neighbouring country. Anyway, sort of interesting when old Teabag came over. It was, I found out for real firsthand. Some of these stories you may have already heard. I'll tell you some of them, but there may be ones you didn't hear of. Went to get himself a prepaid cell phone, and I had to end up sticking it in my name. And over here, it's just standard that you need. I hear about America where you need ID to go out for the night. You can go out for the night all the time here without ID. Fairly often you'll get in nightclubs and stuff like that. No ID or anything like that. Why do you need it? You look over 18, you're fine. But having said that, most people carry it anyway in their wallet. But having said that, there's a lot of things that do require ID, and even basic postage of parcels, especially ones overseas, but just picking up parcels, for instance, you need ID to pick up a parcel. And usually even to send them, especially to send them overseas, you definitely need ID to send a parcel overseas. And prepaid phones, prepaid modems. There was a little bit of a loophole with one company that I'm still with in previous years, where they wouldn't actually look at your ID on the spot, or they might, but possibly not, but they'd ask you as you signed up over the phone, and you could quite easily possibly have just used someone else's if they didn't ask you in the shop. But invariably they ask you for ID, and I said, "Oh, you have your passport?" "Oh, I didn't think I'd need it." And then he pulls out his New York driver's license. I'm like, "Dude, that is not recognised in this country." "Oh, but it's a New York driver's license." "Yeah, well, this is the thing. It's an American ID. Passport is international ID." Could not get that his American driver's license didn't have any weight in this country. It was as good as a fucking library card. We've got other stuff here that is fairly good, which is shooter's license is as good as, gun shooting license is as good as a driver's license. And there's one that is almost as good, which, I know I've got an old one in the cupboard, but nobody knows to see me address. They call a high-risk work license, which is basically a forklift license, crane license, and a cluster of other things. I don't know if scaffolding is included in the same license, but that also is almost as good as a driver's license. An old Teabag, couldn't get it. And learned firsthand how consumeristic Americans could be. Fucking hell, there wasn't a single shop that we didn't end up going in and having a look at. Then we go in and get those dodgy looking flip-flops he got, and yeah, that was up in Coffs Harbour. Had to look through it all like there might be something new, and I'm like, dude, these shops are just full of random shit. You know, well, I need to get this and I need to get that, and you know, I get the sense that Americans usually have three of something they need. Australians might have one, and if you lose it, you go and get a second one, and then you find it again later. But Americans end up getting three of everything, you know. And what's most interesting was they were talking about bank accounts and whatnot. And he had a guy there who was Austrian, who had come over with him to help on the farm. I don't think you ever saw that guy shown. He didn't want to be shown on YouTube. But he's probably, I don't know, about 28 or something. Anyway, he asked something, and old Teabag had to explain that there's no such thing as a checking account in Australia. And then, you know, he explained that in German to the guy, then said to me something about, you know, the cards. And I said, well, a lot of cards overseas should work here without a problem. Furthermore, what you just told him in German is not the case. People have checkbooks here. They might have phased them out in America, but they have them here. In fact, if you get a business account, you definitely will get a checkbook. Whether you want one or not, they will bloody well issue one anyway. Having said that, due to the old trampoline check, as I call it, the checks that always bounce, they're trying to, you know, and the fraud of writing out bullshit checks, you know, checks with no money in the damn account and stuff like that. They're trying to basically wipe out checkbooks here. Now they are, you know, within the last 2 years. But, you know, this was back in, what, 2013 or something when Teabag was over here? Something like that. Can't remember exactly. But yeah, one of these things. And at the moment, you know, they'll take a check if it's a business account, but personal checkbooks are pretty much wiped out already. But they're trying to wipe out the business ones as well and get everyone on the internet banking. Quite intriguing. We ended up going to the shops and he was busy telling me that, you know, I said, well, we better get to this one fast enough. It's 8:30. Oh, well, when do they close? They stay open till 11 at night, don't they? No, hell no. I said most of them close at 8:30. Turned out this one closed at 9 o'clock. We're the only ones in there fumbling around, you know. Teabag, me and this Austrian guy, and they're trying to look for something to, I don't know, gifts for the pastor or something. And, you know, here it was, we're trying to look at, you know, closing times coming, you know, and many times he said different things about different shops, even when he was down in Melbourne with the other one down in Melbourne, that, you know, a lot of these, what's his names, shops always stay open longer in America and they're a lot more courteous and whatnot. Well, yeah, well, not really the case here. We aren't quite as gung-ho for your businesses as they are in the United States. But the interesting thing was, as we're sitting there and you know, it's sort of late enough at night and whatnot. Oh, look, there's this camera. And I'm thinking, you know, no, was it that day or it might have been the day before? Or was it the day after? Anyway, he ends up finding this camera in the same shop. $200. Oh, gee, this camera's so good. I should get this camera. And I think he did end up getting it. And then basically didn't use it worth a shit. And he took a couple of videos with it and a bunch of photos with it. And there's a hell of a lot of footage he takes and photos he takes that never ever end up in his videos, you know. And it was a whole day trip that me and him and the Melbourne guy went on, and you know, to look at all these areas where the pasture had originally been. Videos of sheep and photos of every damn thing. Nothing actually got shown on YouTube of that. Even the aquarium. We went to Melbourne Aquarium. You saw the videos I had of it. He videoed the whole lot. You know, he's turned around and it's another funny story in that. But back to the point, he's seen this camera he wanted, and he's gone and rang Mama. It's a $200 camera, which in American terms is about 150 US or something like that. And he's gone and rang Mama to ask her to deposit money in his account so he can get it within, you know, by the next day or the next morning or something like that. And, oh, that's funny, she isn't answering. She always answers. So he looks at the world clock app. It's fucking 3 a.m. in Michigan. He didn't even check before ringing her. Couldn't work out why she wasn't answering until he looked at his phone. Yeah. Well, I just borrow money off my mum and she just transfers it over. It's not like, well, you know, I have access to my YouTube money over here. It's, you know, I ask my mum for money and she transfers money into my account. It was basically, he was borrowing $200 for this camera off of Mama, which he'd probably never get back. And, you know, that's the way it is. Later on, I then hear that link doesn't work and his mum pays for everything. Well, at the time, my mum hadn't had a job for about 18 months and she was still 2 years off getting the pension. And as for my father, he was back to 3 days a week, if not actually, you know, he was semi-retired, if not fully retired at that point, but still with no pension because he retired early. Now, I'm not really supposed to say financial things, but they sold a block of land that they had and they were living off the proceeds of that. I don't know if I've ever really voiced this on YouTube, but Teabag's mum works in a bank in Michigan, which is why she can transfer money so quickly, because she just looks at her own terminal, tappity tap, bang, money goes straight in. I believe she is probably one of the longest serving members in that bank because she's been there, the way he was saying it was like more than 15 years at that time, you know, and yeah, it's intriguing, you know. Now you know why he transfers money so easy from Mama, because Mama has worked in a bank for years. And that's something you may not have known. Their so-called mansion in Michigan, she lives in a double-wide transportable. Yeah. This is what happens when you keep having reasonably new vehicles and you're constantly supporting your son. And he claims his sister is supported almost entirely by the parents. And that the sister's boyfriend, for whatever reason, he didn't like the sister's boyfriend at all. And I bet you that sister's boyfriend could tell some bloody stories. I bet you he's seen it all from old Teabag. And, well, he's only living there, you know, because he can be there rent-free and free food or whatever bullshit. And all that. Yeah, it is, you know, if they're in love, well, you know, I get the real feeling that the sister's boyfriend and him, there was, like, he knew how much of a lazy prick Teabag was, and he'd seen a bunch of stuff. And I reckon if he's broke it off with the sister, I reckon, I don't know if he has or not, but I reckon he could tell you some fucking unbelievable stories about Teabag. Anyway, onto the Melbourne aquarium. Sort of funny, like I'd come out of the radiator joint and, there's a bit of tax involved, and a lot of people thought that redundancy packages don't have tax. It was about 9,000, and I ended up with about 7,200. Now, these were the days where after mucking around with Teabag, I ended up building a cardboard house, and, well, in between seeing him in Coffs Harbour and him coming down to Melbourne, I built the cardboard house. And the long and short of it is, he ended up sleeping in that cardboard house overnight. Most he's wiped most of the videos involving me and all the ones involving the, farm that the Colt owns. Having said that, I know of a couple that involve me or get my mention or things associated with that. There are still a few up, but the vast majority is white, but he did miss a few. And we're not going to mention names because I might have to download those as proof still that, that we were associated, although he's done the old Soviet Union style thing and try to wipe any mention of any real association. Not that really now you don't even want to be associated with him. But anyway, getting back to the point, I was pretty well stoked with cash. But that's the point. I'd got most of it out in cash. And by the time he come down to Melbourne, I had recently registered for welfare, like a month or two beforehand. Now, basically, I had a little card they call a healthcare card. It's just the most shitty-ass bit of cardboard crap you've ever come across. They literally send it in a letter, and you punch it out of the bottom of the page, and then fold it in half, and you've got to sign one side of it. And you use it for reduced train fares, and sometimes when there's another one they call Medicare card, not healthcare card, but Medicare card. That's a full credit card-like thing, which I never had one for a few years, and now I've got one for me at this address. But the long and short of it is the healthcare card is just almost nothing to do with healthcare. It's just a little welfare discount card. Now that means that in certain areas like museums you can get in cheaper, but usually it's just cheap public transport. And lo and behold, well, Melbourne Aquarium's owned by the government, isn't it? So we turn up there, and as we're walking up to all this, Teabag's going, he's saying to because the Austrian guy ended up coming with us again, and he's saying to the Austrian guy, I'm a bit worried that some of us may not be able to afford this. Referencing me. Dude, don't worry, I'm choking on cash. And we get up there, and he sees the prices, and it's like $38 entry or something, which, that's about probably, I don't know, about 30 US, maybe 31, 32. And he's like, oh, shit. Oh, geez, I don't know if we can afford this. And I was sitting there thinking, hang on a minute, 2 minutes ago, you were sitting there trying to tell this other guy that you might be worried that you and him might have to pay for me. And now you're shitting bricks when you've seen this price. And I said, yeah, it's a little bit steep, but, is what it is. And I looked at the concession price, it was like $16 or something. Now, concession is this healthcare card. I should have mentioned that. So that's your concession price. And it's also there's a pension card you can get that is also a fairly powerful little card, because that also gives you the exact same benefits that the healthcare card does. And more, actually. So there's a certain amount of trips a year you can get for free. with that, but that gives you the same sort of discounts that you'll get with a healthcare card and a couple of extra bits and bobs. And the long and short of it is, of course, I had this card. So I said, well, I'll go and get me tickets. They go, hang on, before you get your tickets, can we all go on your card? I said, dude, it's a card and it's got my name. Well, what about if, you use the card and you pay for your ticket, then before you walk through the turnstile or whatever, you hand me the card and I'll use your card. And I said, dude, they're not stupid. They're not stupid. It's got my name on it. We can't, all three of us can't all be fucking Link Knight. And here he was, shit, fucking, and he was just about ready to go home. After sitting there telling the Austrian guy that, I don't know if we can all afford this, hinting that he's going to have to pay for me, and he's fucking shitting bricks when he's seen this price. And was just ready to hop on the train and go home and go, fuck, mate, we haven't spent an hour and a half coming down here for nothing, We used the light rail, which is slow as fuck. Because it stops at like every fucking block, basically, almost, maybe every second block, but taking us so long to get there as a result. I was thinking it was like an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes to get there, and here he is thinking I'm going to hand the welfare card back so he can frickin' use it to get through, and it's like, dude, they're not dumb. Finally gets in, we start videoing stuff. Funny, the little, what do they call them again? Little fish that squirt the water, and here we are videoing all this stuff, and he sees the bloody croc boat. Oh, that couldn't be right. Is that real? I think that's just fake. And I said, no, this is a real boat. I said, well, haven't they just put those marks in to make it look fake? And I had a look at the boat. This is the croc boat that had the big fucking bite in the back of it. And you could see that there's a lot of wear on, on the edge of the boat where people have been hopping over the edge, and in the bottom and on the seat. You've seen it's had a fair amount of use. And he seriously thought it was a fake. He said, but this is fake. And I said, no, look, it's a fairly well-worn boat. I thought they just got a well-worn boat and maybe they'd done this. And I said, well, if they faked it, they'd probably just use a new cheap Chinese one, And I said, no, this is, I can almost guarantee you that's the real deal. And I mean, the teeth spacing was spot on and everything. And then you looked at the plaque, and I don't know, I think the plaque may have confirmed it, but I don't know for certain that crocodile boat was a real one, And that's what crocs do. They fucking bite a hole in the back of your boat, And these aren't Florida alligators that you can put cream buns on their nose. No, these are crocodiles. They will fucking kill you in half a second after you spent 15 years hand feeding them from a baby, and they fucking do shit like that. And he could hardly believe it, and he still wasn't too sure it was real. Nah, dude, it's real. There's an old thing you want to talk about sexism. How's this one? The Aboriginals used to make up these sort of disposable boats up in the Northern Territory that were made out of a certain sort of bark called paper bark. It's almost like cigarette paper, but there's like about 30, 40, 50 bits in one hunk. So they'd cut all the bark off of this tree and they'd use that to make this little boat. And they used to have a thing where they would deliberately put an old woman at the back of the boat. You say, why is that? Because the saying used to be, and it's not untrue, that if a crocodile's going to attack, it'll get the person at the back of the boat. Because if you're moving forwards, of course, it's just coming up behind you so that it's not so visible, and it'll grab the back of the boat so that you can't see it coming. So if they got the guys rowing, or I don't know if they use sticks to push themselves along, because they used to use them only in swampy areas, and no fast-flowing water areas, and a lot of areas there the water's very slow, sort of flowing water, even in the rivers, and so they'd be using that, and of course the crocodiles come up from behind, so it wasn't seen. But they would deliberately put an old woman in the back of the boat as the last person in the boat, because if it got the old woman, well, it wasn't much of a loss because she was old and she's probably going to die anyway, and it was only an old woman. I'm not joking. That's the sexism. Oh, we can't use one of the young men, so we'll just use one of the old ladies. So there'd be some old girl, probably 70 years old, sitting in the back, hoping to fuck that there wasn't going to be a croc this time, because she was deliberately the fucking sacrificial boat member. But anyway, we went around and looked at the piper fish, or what are they? They shoot the water, and anyway, he's there going, oh, you know, I've got plenty of good footage and that, and we're getting nearer to the end at that point. And yeah, I'll definitely make me money back on all this, you know. Don't know if it was the end, because there's a restaurant there, and then there's the penguins at the very end. And he's sitting there going, oh, I'm definitely going to make me money out of this. You know, this video will definitely be paying for itself. And you know, there wasn't a single damn video that ever went up. And he's going, oh, I'm going to have to stagger this. This is going to have to be 3 individual videos. I've got so much footage. We're definitely going to make our money back on our cost of getting in. He never put a single one up. Not one. You know, so there you go. There's, you know, a bit more that a lot of stuff happens. Everything gets filmed, but most of it, you know, not most of it, but quite a bit of it is discarded. And, yeah. But anyway, it's a bit of Teabag stories.